painter was now standing 2 beside him. Toby leans down, his face inches away from mine until he smiles evilly. "You might want to run." He laughs, causing me to breathe heavily, stumbling to my feet, scrambling away down to the ball, listening to Toby's and Painter's laughter fading in the distance as I grew further and further away, running all through the maze of hallways and rooms. I had no idea where to go. Any room is a bad idea. Who knows what's in there? But staying out in the open is also a bad idea. Slowing my pace to stop, leaning down to rest my hands on my thighs in order to catch breath, I suddenly hear a low-pitched cackling. Turning around, I spot a monochrome clown running towards me, slashing its long finger-like claws in my direction. Screaming, I turn to face forward again and make a dash for it, holding my arm as tight as I can as my wrist begins to swell. Turning left, down the hall, then to the right, then another hall, and to the right again, only to come straight back to the main entrance. I had gone round in a circle. Looking around, I noticed no one, so I slowed down to be aware as I walked and searched around, quietly looking for the best place to go. But I suddenly stop as my mind picks up in an unknown, unfamiliar voice. "There she is, that bitch." Even though the voice was spoken in the person's head, it was full of anger and even had a growl to it. As I look around, trying to spot the person, I begin to hear a quiet yet loud distance ticking sound, almost like a clock. "I'll make her pay for taking my man." As I'm distracted by the voice, suddenly someone springs out, grabbing my arm. I scream and try to run, but they quickly shush me to be silent. "Hey, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm here to help," they whisper yelled, so only I could hear enough. Turning around, I'm stunned by what I see. A girl with long brown hair and covered in scars. One of her eyes was a beautiful emerald green. The other was missing, but replaced with a pocket watch that had been removed from its case. It somehow still worked and ticked away in her socket. I couldn't help but hiss through my teeth quietly and cringe. "Listen, I know you think you can't trust me, but I'm honestly here to help you escape." Her voice seemed recognizable, but I couldn't click from where. "Follow me." She gestures towards the stairs. Away from the front door. Cautiously following her, she leads me all the way up to the stairs to some sort of attic, but I don't enter the room she wants me to. I remain outside of its door. "What are you waiting for? Come on!" She calls for me to go in, but instead I take a step back. I'm sure the voice I heard in my head was her voice. I didn't trust her. "Mel, come on!" "How do you know my name?" I begin to panic. How did she know my name? How could she? She stares at me blankly before growling, taking a knife and lashing at me. I yell in fear, down the steps, but on my way down, near the bottom, I trip, causing me to fall. Luckily, someone caught me, but unluckily, the thing that caught me was a knife. It drove straight through my chest. Gasping for air over the pain, I shakily and weakly look up to the source holding the knife. A tear rolls down my face as Toby's emotionless face comes into view. I feel winded in agony as he pushes the knife deeper and twisting, causing an ear-twitching grinding sound against my ribs. I wheeze as he yanks out the knife, blood pouring out of my mouth until my body falls to the floor. Everything turned white.
"Mel, what are you doing? We don't have time for this." Toby calls panicky. I shook my head to find myself back in the street outside the forest. Toby still his same old self. "What? What happened? You killed me. I saw it." Toby drags me to the edge of the forest, but stops to get a strong look at me. "What are you talking about?" I was so confused. What happened felt so real. The knife, the wrist, the heartbreak, and fear. Did I imagine the scenario in my head from panicking or fear? "Mel, I don't know what's going through your head." "Toby, do you think I'm weak-minded and pathetic?" He looks stunned, gripping into my wrist but in a somewhat softer manner, turning to me more, holding my other wrist with his other hand, sliding his grasp down to my palms, holding my hands tightly, standing close to me. "What put those thoughts in your head? I love you, Mel." "Toby, do you think I'm weak-minded and pathetic?" He looks stunned, gripping into my wrist, but in a somewhat softer manner, turning to me more, holding my other wrist with his other hand, sliding his grasp down to my palms, holding my hands tightly, standing close to me. Of course you're pathetic and weak-minded. I only have to tighten my grip and you'll cry. He snarls, crushing my hands as his grip tightens unnaturally, causing me to scream in agony, snatching my broken hands out of his grasp, staring down at my mangled fingers. I scream in agony, snatching my broken hands out of his grasp, staring down at my mangled fingers, only to see they were no longer broken and there was no pain. I looked up to see a confused Toby staring at me. Mel, what's happening? Are you okay? Mel, what's happening? Is your poor, weak, fragile body hurting? Did I grip too hard? My mistake. I didn't mean to grip too hard. You're still alive. He snarls, taking a step closer to me. What's wrong? You're looking at your hands. Did I hold you too hard? He frowns, taking a step closer, causing me to step back. I don't know what's happening. This scenario is happening twice. One, you're good, and the other, you're evil. But I'm experiencing the pain and fear from the evil in both good and bad situations. What's happening? I begin to freak out as he holds my shoulders, shushing me to calm me down as I begin to hyperventilate. Mel, we need to leave the forest. Slender is coming to kill us. He's doing this to you, trying to confuse you. Who's Slender? He sighs, running as fast as he can whilst holding my wrist, dragging me with him. We're in his forest. I need to get you out of here. Toby and I run through the forest as fast as we can, him holding onto my hand, giving me a tug every now and then to be sure I'm keeping up my pace and don't slow. His grip was tight and protective, but soft and worrying. Come on, Mel. I'm getting you out of here. Suddenly, Toby's no longer holding my wrist, but instead I'm on my back against the grass, dirt and stones, being dragged by my hair as he yanks me harshly. My skin grazes and cuts on the sharp stones my body slices over. Screaming and squirming in pain as I feel blood drip from my head at his forceful yanking of my hair. It was astonishingly painful and long-lasting. Come on, Mel. Let's get you out of here, He laughs evilly, giving my hair a tight, quick twist before forcing my neck to jolt to the side, causing a numbing sensation in my neck. I scream, coming to a stop, yanking my hand from Toby's as I breathe heavily, checking myself over for cuts, bruises, and blood. There was nothing. Toby turns back to look at me, watching the horror in my face. He knew the scenarios were still happening. He rushes towards me, taking me in an embrace and whispering in my ear, Remember, Mel, the evil scenario is fake. It's not real. During one, speak out loud that you know it's fake. Breathing heavily and quickly, I nod to his advice, inhaling for a long, deep breath of fresh air before we continue running again. The forest was like a maze. This time as we ran, Toby held me in his arms, carrying me bride style to keep me close to him, allowing me to feel his reassuring touch. Toby no longer carries me bride style. Instead, I was hunched over his shoulder, a large knife in his hand across my back as he held me up, ready to strike the blade at any moment into my skin. I couldn't help but squirm in a frantic panic and cry loudly in fear, but this just made him more angry, stabbing the knife blades deep into my thigh, causing me to scream in agony, to which he then throws me to the floor, landing on the knife, pushing it in more. As I lay in Toby's arms as he runs, he suddenly trips and falls due to my ear-busting scream. I fumble out in his arms, landing on my thigh. Mel! He yells almost instantly after dropping me, running over to me to help me to my feet. Mel, I'm so sorry. You caught me off guard when you screamed. Look at you, screaming from a knife to the leg. I've had much worse. You pathetic scum. I wince at the pain, but then remember what the real Toby said. This isn't real. I mumble between gasps and flinches of pain. What was that? He snarls, leaning down over to me, grabbing my chin and yanking my head towards him, feeling his hot breath against my face. This isn't real. Suddenly, Toby's body disperses into dust, followed by the trees and bushes, leaving behind a bright white light. I couldn't help but shield my eyes with my hands, but even then, it was still bright. Once the light faded, the real Toby showed crouched in front of me as a worried expression plasters over his face. Lunging forward, I hold him in a tight hug as tears fall down my cheek. It worked. It really worked. I cry happily as I squeeze him tighter. causing him to respond in the same way, wrapping his arms around me more. Good, but that doesn't mean he won't be back, he says as he stands, holding his hand for me to grab, which I do. Before we continue our way, he leans towards me, placing a smooth, sweet kiss on my lips, by which I happily return. It felt so good to kiss him. I never wanted it to end, but he eventually pulls away, looking into my eyes before speaking. Let's go, he says for the final time, by which we instantly continue on our way for an exit out of the forest. The exit to the forest was growing near. We could see the empty road and pavements, but as we drew closer, I suddenly stopped, causing Toby to stop also, staring at me in confusion. Mel, come on, we're almost. Before he could finish, I raised my hand to stop him, pushing a shushing sound through my teeth to silence him. Shh, can you hear that? I whisper as I tilt my head a little to hear the sound better. Closing my eyes, the faint distant cries of a child filled my eardrums, allowing me to finally realize what the noise was. Slamming my eyes open, I grab Toby's arm and pull him back through the forest trees where we had just come. There's a child in here. She sounds hurt. No, Mel, remember, it's all a trick, he yells, coming to a stop and yanking my arm, causing me to turn and look at him. I told you that tricks would be played on you. I can hear it too. It's fake. How do you know? How can you be sure this is fake? What if it's a real little girl who's lost? Perhaps she followed us and is now lost? Toby shakes his head with a sigh, squeezing my arm. Mel, no, that wouldn't have happened. Please, trust me on this. I did trust Toby, of course, but the girl just sounded so real. I lower my head and nod. He sighs a breath of relief and lets my arm go. He turns back and heads towards the forest edge. I follow him closely, but suddenly, as the exit was near again, I hear the same female child cry, but this was more of a scream for help to be exact. Quickly, I turn back and make a run for it in the trees. Toby must have heard my increasing footsteps, and his angry voice calls my name from behind. Every time I reach the source, I find nothing. I can hear the girl, but I can't find her. I can't imagine the pain she must be in. It sounds as if she's in agony. The poor soul. As I searched around in the trees, the atmosphere started to change, becoming foggy and misty, which is bad as I was no longer with Toby. Now I was alone in an eerie forest with the background sound of a crying child. I began to grow fearful and give up hope, but I finally spot a figure of something small. As I walk closer to it, the crying sound increases. I knew this was the girl. Rushing to her, I call out to her, getting her attention, but she doesn't respond, just continues to cry. Maybe she didn't hear me. Finally, I reach her. The poor thing. She looked awfully cold and so scared. She had messy brown hair and a ripped pink dress covered in mud and bloodstains. Her weeping eyes were a beautiful glossy green, but the thing that stood out the most was the blood on her face, dripping from her hairline. Crouching down to her level, I cradled her face with my hand, wiping her tears. Her crying begins to stop, the sniffles and low sobs. What happened, sweetie? Did someone hurt you? Where's your mother? I questioned, but as soon as I finished, her sobs instantly stopped. Her large green eyes fixed on me like a lethal death stare. Her stern expression changed to that of an evil grin, reaching up her cheeks on both sides, beginning to laugh menacingly. I forced myself away from her, standing to my feet, but her laugh only grows. Taking a step back to prepare to run, she stops laughing, her expression returning to a stern glare. I take another step back, but this seemed to anger her. Suddenly, she snapped her head back, letting out an ear-piercing scream. I couldn't even run away. All I could do was crouch to the floor, covering my ears from the agony of her high-pitched scream. Soon enough, she stops, finishing with a giggle, but before I could move, something hits the back of my head, causing me to instantly fall unconscious. Ticci, Toby's point of view. As I finally convinced Mel, we again had to leave the forest, but over the distant screams of Sally's voice, I hear fast-moving footsteps. Turning around, I spot Mel rushing off into the woods, following Sally's voice to help her. I knew Sally wasn't in any danger, and that it was a trick. I tried to tell her. Mel! I call as I run after her, but she was too far ahead, and I end up losing her. Sally's cries had also stopped, meaning two things. One, Mel was close to her, for, too. Mel has found her already. God, please don't find her, Mel. If she reaches Sally, she'll alert the others. Just then, I hear a loud ear-piercing screech, causing me to cover my ears in agony. This was no cry for help. This was Sally's signal. I had to find Mel. Taking a deep breath, I remove my hands and make a run to the source of the sound. It starts to grow louder, but suddenly stops. No, no! Picking up the pace, I suddenly freeze when I see LJ walking in the direction of the mansion. Mel limply slumped over his shoulder. It was clear she was not conscious. I go to call out to LJ, but there was a sudden noise behind me, springing around to face the source. I end up coming face to face with nothing. Just trees, fog, and empty spaces. What? Confused, I turn around only to remain conscious for a split second before blacking out. The last thing I see is a white mask with the blood-dripping painted smile. Reader's point of view. I start to feel my body and my mind coming around, back in consciousness. Though I still felt really drowsy. Whatever hit me must have knocked me out pretty hard, as a hammering pain remains on the back of my skull. Sighing at the pressuring pain, I go to open my eyes, but begin to panic. Once I realized my eyes were already open, but everything was still dark. Had I gone blind? Was I currently blindfolded? I couldn't tell. I go to move my hands, but they wouldn't budge, remaining by my side, and only the sound of rattling chains could be heard against my thrashing. My heart rate increases, and so does my breathing, once I finally realized that I had been kidnapped and chained somewhere, possibly blindfolded. Trying to move my legs, I soon discovered that I was also restrained by my ankles, with only a short chain, not even enough to lift my foot off the ground. Tears begin to scream as I painfully thrash about in the cold, tight restraints. Hello? Please, somebody help me. I call, only to hear the emptiness of the void that surrounded me. By the judge of how my voice sounded, I was in a room. Shortly following my call, I heard the sound of a large door and lock gate creaking open, followed by one or two sets of footsteps, creaking of the door again, before a final locking sound, causing me to gulp hard. My body shakes, causing the chains to rattle as several footsteps approach me, my breathing increasing, becoming noisy and shuddery as I gasp for air between cries of panic. Suddenly, something is ripped off from my head, causing a bright light to beam into my eye sockets. I couldn't help but whine, squinting my eyes shut a little, allowing them to readjust. Once they do, three figures stand before me, towering tall over me, a monochrome clown, an all gray with golden, glowing eyes, clutching onto golden strings, and a familiar masked figure, blue with black ooze. The three figures stared down at me, though I could only see the face of two of them, due to the mask the third person wore. Please, who are you? Where am I? Why am I here? I questioned the three of them, tears slowly falling from my eyes as I tried to hold them back as much as I could. However, none of them answer. Instead, they just chuckle. It was low and eerie, completely altering the atmosphere. I felt in danger, and my fear only grew and grew. Please, please answer me, I cried as more tears began to fall, no longer being able to hold them back, watching shakily as their evil eyes and emotionless mask glare down at me. My sobs become louder as I go to speak one more time, but before I could, the monochrome clown lunges his hand forward, his long claw-like fingers clamping around my chin, yanking my head forward, causing me to gasp at the sudden movement. Leaning down towards me, his razor teeth disappearing from sight as his grin fades. His other hand races to his face, folding his fingers, all but one, pushing it against his lips. What followed was a slow, deep shushing sound, telling me to be quiet, causing me to whimper, trying to pull away, but his grip tightens.